Are you spending over $2,000 a month on rent? That is $24,000 with nothing to show for it. That's kind of sad. I'm Lauren, and this is Raul with the Schrader Group, and we're going to break down the real pros and cons of renting versus buying. So what's the state of the market in 2025, and how is it looking into 2026?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we've definitely flipped coming into 25 as a kind of neutral seller buyer kind of market into an ultra buyer market. So there's a lot of upsides for the buyer, more inventories, more people giving more money in the form of incentives or seller concessions. So not only are buyers getting incentives on closing costs, on rate buy downs, but they're just getting anything they're asking for to a certain degree. But, the stabilizing of the home prices are actually a really good thing because we're kind of back to where we were pre-pandemic, 2020 early days. So that's kind of a good checking point. So now finally, San Antonio's been so constant seller market for over 20 plus years that now it's kind of giving the buyers the upper hand to kind of get into the market and say, now I can actually make this work.
What are the pros and cons of renting now?
The pros and cons of renting right now, well, flexibility to move, right? I mean, there's inventories. You don't have to worry about repairs. If something breaks, you call your landlord. That's nice. It's easier if you need to relocate. You at least have a guideline of when you got to move out, so you kind of know where you're at.
What about the cons?
Well, the cons are interesting. So, let's just say you were renting right now and you wanted to redecorate your room and paint and do all this stuff. You can't, right? Because then you're going to have to go ahead and put it back. You put any kind of holes in the walls, you're going to get dinged for it later. You can't really make improvements to the property. So all that money's gone, right? And historically, taxes continue to rise. So each month, your taxes are going to go higher and higher, which means that every year your renewals will go a little bit higher. So renting's just going to get more and more expensive. You're not going to have any equity in the house. So once you've been there for 5 years, you said $24,000. I mean, that's a lot of money. That's over $100,000 in 4 or 5 years. So when you look at that number, you're thinking like, wow, I could have had 20 or 30 or 40 grand in a house right now, and all that equity that could have been built up. I think that's huge. But 100% of it goes out the window, right? We always worried about things flying out the window when the windows are down or the top's down in some vehicles. But think about it. $1,500 a month turns into $18,000 a year, or like you said, $2,000 a month to $24,000. I mean, all that money's just gone. So I think for me, the biggest con would be the fact that you don't have anything to anchor yourself to move into the future. Right. I mean, if it's short term, great, who cares? But if you're looking at long term, I think it's just a bad situation.
Yeah. What are the pros and cons of buying now?
Well, I think essentially when you buy now, you start the clock, right? So every payment you make, it might be that much that you're getting in equity, but it's going to start to snowball later on in life. So you start to build that wealth and start that legacy process. You get to lock in a payment, which is really good because at least you know exactly where your monthly is going to be year after year. So that keeps you from rising rents sometimes. The tax benefits along with it, you can write off your mortgage insurance and all those good things. The incentives that are out there, I think that we're not going to see that probably for too much longer. I think we'll have a lot of that built into our buying process, but eventually people are going to start trying to make profits again. And I think right now people are just trying to get out of it and trying to turn product and get out of their situation. So I think right now is a really, really good time. And you can always refinance later, right? So if you don't get a really, really good 3.99 or 4.99 rate, on the horizon or at the end of the scope, I think in 2026 sometime, we're going to get some more affordable rates that allow for that to happen. Now, the flip side, cost of buying a house, right? So sometimes you got to do closing costs, down payment, whether you're doing FHA at 3.5% down or maybe conventional 5%, depending on programs, it could be a little less. But there's some of those that are in play, and the responsibility of making payments and keeping up your house and all the good stuff that comes with home ownership. But you have less flexibility if you need to move short term, right? So like if you buy a house and all of a sudden you want to move to California, well, now we got to sell the house. And typically in our market, it takes between 2 to 3 years to break even from a purchase. So if you're thinking about buying, at least have that in the back of your head that, hey, if I do buy, there's an exit strategy in place, especially if military is coming in and PCS, and make sure that if we do have to leave in 2 or 4 years, at least we get that mortgage payment rented out for you. That way you're protected.
What opportunities are available in 2025?
Well, I think in general, if you're renting, we can be a resource to a lot of different opportunities. If you're in a rental or a second lease, we can help you out with the lease buyout, which I think would help you get into the ease of purchasing a new home. There's a lot of first-time homebuyer programs, some tax credits, things like that we could kind of shape and gear you, or at least get you to a qualified lender that can kind of break down everything. Because I think at the end of the day, if you're paying $2,000 and you could get close to that monthly mortgage, on a home that's extra years, I think that makes sense. So I think just getting with somebody that knows what's going on, that way we can kind of guide you through the process.
What are some common myths that first-time home buyers believe?
Yeah, so I think the biggest one we always hear is I need to save 20% before I buy a house. And that's not true. I mean, VA, you could get down with 0%, right? So that's an entitlement that every military member gets. Also, you can get an FHA loan for as low as 3.5% down. Some conventional give lower, but typically it's about 5% minimum. So there's a lot of different programs that kind of trap you with the ease of getting into the house. The other side of it is it's not smart to buy a house when interest rates are high. Well, sometimes that makes sense, but sometimes it doesn't. But like the part that it would make sense is the interest rate might be high today, but will it be high forever? So what you could do is you could buy, because now the price of the house is a little bit cheaper, and you could buy it here. And then once the market turns a little bit, which we're all forecasting might come 2026, once it kind of dips down a little bit, you can refi, get that better attractable rate. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to say, hey, what if I waited instead of bought, and now that the rates drop, now the price of the homes are going to go up. So really you're offsetting the fact that you're saving on an interest rate, but now you're paying more for the house. I would rather pay less for the house at a higher interest, because you can still write some of that off and make that make sense for you and your household. But I think the other myth is not always is renting a bad idea, because sometimes renting could be a good idea. So if you're moving to town and you don't know where you want to be, renting is a better idea than buying, because then maybe you get to the life where you live, right? And you could relocate later. Or sometimes a monthly mortgage for what you're looking at buying might be $2,700, but the rental in that area might be $22,000. Maybe it makes more sense to rent at that current period of time. So it really just goes back to figuring out what your options are. But there's solutions in any kind of market. You just got to get with someone trusted and knows their stuff.
Absolutely. Every situation is unique, and we at the Schrader Group would love to sit down with you, help you walk through it, and answer any questions you have.
Thank you all so much for watching. Please like and subscribe to our channel. And as always, please have a blessed day.